Hi there, dearies. This is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com, back again with another moment for chronic wellness. And I want to talk to you about the fact that 30 years ago this weekend, we celebrated the anniversary of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I have goosebumps right now as I'm talking to you about this because, folks, this was the first piece of legislation on the planet, to protect the civil rights and provide access for people with disabilities in the world. It's really remarkable. And it was made possible, the way was paved for the Americans with Disabilities Act by things like the fight for women's civil rights, the fight for civil rights by people of color, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Like, each of these things laid the foundation for the awareness that protections were not provided for people with disabilities. And maybe you're watching this and you're thinking, cool lady, why does that relate to me? And I'm going to argue that if you are a person with chronic illness, this relates to you, because whether or not you think of yourself as a person with a disability, if you have chronic illness, you have a disability. You have a disabling condition, a condition that requires accommodation or access or protection under the law. And if you believe that civil rights matter, or that women should be equal under the law, or people who are transgender, or that religion or any of these other axes also matter, then you also believe that these protections need to be extended to people with disabilities. And prior to that, there was no guarantee of protection. And the ADA provided guaranteed access under the law to education, to housing, to transportation, employment, and public spaces. And it was a revolution. It was a revelation. It was transformative for its time. And I want to just give you a little context and a little history about how it all came to be. So, grassroots organizers decided that it was time for this to happen. And there were a number of disability rights organizations that came on board. There were teams of attorneys, broad-based coalitions, and ordinary citizens who started writing their own stories about how they had been discriminated against. And they called it the Disability Diaries. So it was first-person stories that they mailed to Congress saying, hey, you probably don't know it, but as a person with a disability, here's how I haven't had access. Or as my child who has a disability, here's how he or she hasn't had access. Or as a person with a mental disability, here's how I haven't had access. And all of those collective pushes together started to change the seas of public opinion. And people started to see that, hey, here is an oversight. Here is a broad base of the population that isn't getting served in our schools, that can be fired from their job for having a disability, that can be denied the right to housing because of their disability. And the ADA started paving the way for that to change. Signed into law in 1990, July 26th of 1990 by George H.W. Bush. So we will pick up here tomorrow, and I'll tell you a few more things about the ADA because I think it's really worth knowing this slice of our history. All right. Thank you for being here. If you have been impacted by the ADA, if you have a story to tell about how you have been granted access, or you have fought for change, or have been involved with the rights for people with disabilities, I'd love to know about them. And until we're together again, I thank you for your time and attention, and be well.